Hi, we will going to talk about Chapter 7, Social Inclusion. Social inclusion is a process that ensures people who belong to different groups, different genders, religions, migrants, LGBTs, race issues, and etc. all have the same opportunities and resources necessary to participate in an economic, social, and cultural activities without any exclusion. We must treat everyone with the same respect. Recognize personal situation however they want it to be. And I think when I see a person with a disability, we shouldn't call him that because he has the same capabilities as we to do something to our country, to our society, and we don't see this person how incapable or useless and recognize how much they are good, and they are also inequalities in development countries with a different way. For example, power, wealth, etc. It's not the same with indigenous from Mexico to indigenous from United States, right? It's different for all the countries, high development countries and low development countries. Another point to highlight is incredible is how in some countries laws continue to discriminate groups of people in a society. For example, if a man married with a foreign woman, he has the right only for marriage the Dominican nationality, but is a woman who married with a foreign man, the man has to do paperwork for the nationality. Why, if we are the same? With other hand, we also saw slavery, and it's a notorious inequality. We don't see a person with slavery in high development countries, but we can find in low development countries. It's not thing of the past. It's something. It's real today. For example, child slavery, trafficking with women and children, soldiers with recruit children and forced to killing. Another is to children exploited to work in the mine of Africa. There are 6 important approaches to social inclusion. First is virtue values. Virtue values are attitudes, dispositions, and characters that allow us to act in ways to develop this potential. We behave that we have adopted. The second is golden rule. Don't do to others that you wouldn't want them to do to you. Jesus said that, and also said that faith without words is dead. And we must treat everyone with the same respect and love it. And applies in all areas of our life. For example, you go to the set and someone treat you very badly, and the same person go to a restaurant and waitress behave very badly too. I invite you to think about how you treat to others. Third is to the ethics. For example, someone who works in a design company, I don't know, a woman come in and tell him that she want in the main image a woman is slapping a man. It's crazy, you know that it's not right. It's not correct.
The fourth approach to ethics is utilitarianism, founded by Jeremy Bentham in 1780 in the Introduction to the Principles of Morals and Legislation, says that utility is all that produces happiness. Therefore, the good and right is what produces well-being and reduces sadness. The fifth philosophical approach to the social ethics is libertarianism, which holds that the biggest moral rule is liberty and that the meaning of life is freedom to choose one's own life course. In this philosophy, the biggest damage occurs when the state takes away the liberties of people, and the best form of government is a limited government. The last philosophical approach is the human rights philosophy. This philosophy holds that every human being on the planet has basic human rights that must be protected by the society. There are 5 basic categories of such rights: political, civil, economical, social, and cultural rights. These approaches want meeting universal basic needs. These are those vital needs that contribute directly or indirectly to a person's survival, like eat, drink, and sleep. Or merit goods. These are those goods and services that should be accessible for all the people, like health and education.
The next subtopic that Mitani and I are going to talk is about declarations, conventions, and the MDGs of the United Nations. The Universal Declarations of the Human Rights was born when the Second World War was ended, and this is known as an extremely important document that they obtained at the end of this war. The UDHR only wants to prevent another global war, so if all the people of the world had their basic rights, it will improve the economic well-being that they have. In 1948, all the governments of the world agreed in the UDHR that all the member states must strive to defend and learn all the rights that was part of the declaration. There are many rights, and I will mention some of them. For example, the Article 22 says that every person as part of a society has the right to social security. It also has the right of realization through the national effort and international cooperation, and of the economic, culture, and social rights. The Article 23 of the UDHR is about the right to work. Everyone has the right to work, to have the free choice of employment, to have a favorable working conditions, and to fight against the unemployment. So the Article 23 talks about the work. The Article 24 talks about the rest and the recreation and the limitations of the working hours and the paid vacations. This is the Article 24. So we pass to the Article 25 that talks of the right that a person have to an adequate standard of living for the health and for the well-being of yourself and of your family. That includes food, clothing, housing, medical cares, necessary social service, etc. The Article 26 is about the right of the education. Education will be free at least in the elementary and fundamental stage. The primary education will be compulsory. The second, that is the technical and career education, will be widely available. And the third, that is the higher education, will be equally accessible to all of the bases of merits. And the last one, that is the Article 28, everyone has the right to have a social or international order established in which the rights and the freedom established can be fully realized.
Oh, hey guys, I'm gonna be talking about the last part of the presentation of my team. Basically, I'm gonna be explaining what I understood about my part that I got from the book. the part that I got from my book, it's really important because I'm going to be talking about these two covenants that are so much important for the human itself. Because if you didn't know, the humans back in the days of before 1960, 1950s, they weren't so kind with each other. They didn't get the treatment that you receive nowadays. So I'm gonna be explaining that. Well, I'm gonna be talking about a little bit of history about these two covenants. Alright, I'm gonna start mentioning the year 1966. This year was huge for human rights because it was the first time that mankind heard about that concept on the United Nations. Because on that year, the United Nations Assembly talks about this subject of the human rights. So they come up with this idea of the first covenant. The first covenant that I'm going to be mentioning right now was the ICCPR. The ICCPR is basically the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights. I'm going to try to be as brief as possible with the explanation of this covenant. This covenant basically talks about how you should be provided by a range of civil protection and from abuses from the states. So basically it talks how people should be free to have a life itself, because back in the day people weren't treated fairly. So you need to come up with a solution to try to help people to be treated fairly and have more opportunities in this life. This covenant was put in works on 1960s, and nowadays 176 countries are affiliated with this covenant. So this is huge for humankind. Alright, I'm gonna start talking about the second covenant. The second covenant is the International Covenant of Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. This second covenant was really important because it was also created as the same year of the first covenant. But basically this covenant focused more on some specific areas of society. For example, it focused on cultural areas, economic areas, social areas, because those parts, they weren't really explained on the first covenant. So this second covenant come up with the idea of we are gonna protect people in those areas to be treated fairly. So basically these two covenants complement each other. So this is a really huge deal for humankind and sustainable development, because if you already know, sustainable development tries to fix problems from society on all around the world. So I was reading on the book and it was really curious because I didn't get it, because they try to connect the Millennium Development Goals with these two covenants. Later on the book, on my research on the internet, I didn't get why the book was trying so hard to connect the two covenants with the Millennium Development Goals. But later I started to look up on the internet, and then I realized that the Millennium Development Goals is basically like a sequel of these two covenants, because these Millennium Development Goals, they base their targets based on the two covenants, because they're trying to solve really similar problems. I don't know if you get me. So basically on 2000 they created the Millennium Development Goals to help the two covenants and another pacts that they were created later to help humankind to solve the problems, because humankind has so many problems back in the day, and we still have so many problems. So it's really important to try to realize that we are on a situation that we need to improve. So basically that's all for our part.